Hi, everyone. I'm Royal Norman. This is Sonoran Sky, a First Alert podcast from Arizona's family. And today, we've got flood control in the house. Dan Henz and Jonny Malloy in the house. How you guys doing?
Thanks for having us. Fantastic.
Dan says nothing. My buddy Dan's like, I'm here.
I'm going to come in hitting you pretty hard, Royal.
I know.
You invited us on a perfect day, right?
Yes, I
It's late
did.
June.
I did.
There's no thunderstorms, no activity yet.
No.
But the high temperatures today is only going to be in the low hundreds, so we're about, 8-9 degrees below average?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we weren't even sweating coming out.
Yeah, I know. It's really crazy. And how
Perfect day
about
to get together.
when we're recording this, we're right after the Sunday where we had the 99 with no rain. 99 with no rain in June is amazing, isn't it?
I mean, there was people coming up to us even in the office talking about it. Yeah, it's like, what part of the year are we in? And yeah, it's before monsoon. Technically, we're in monsoon, and it's 99.
It's just amazing to me. Known Dan a long time, known Papa Henz a long time through the X, I guess you call it, his X tweets. And, one of the things I appreciate about what you guys are doing at Flood Control is how over the last, 10 to 15 years, it's really grown to a kind of like a specialized, very important part of what we do in the monsoon here. Don't you think?
Yeah. Again, this is our Super Bowl for Arizonans. Maybe the desert Southwest is probably the way to put it because the monsoon affects all of us down here. But this is the most exciting time of the year when it comes to weather. People are pumped. People are excited. We have a huge data set of really useful information. We've got scientists there that want to analyze this data, and we have great data we want to show to you. So why not highlight all that? Let's try and be one of the major voices when it comes to talking monsoon, and we can talk to great people like you that know how to spread the word to the Phoenix Valley.
Yeah, and you know what? I just love how, maybe 20 and 30 years ago when I was doing this job, there weren't a whole lot of places you could go for data. And now we can get rain data and sometimes wash data and everything. And that's all from you guys.
Yeah.
Well, what's great is that data still existed. I mean, the plots that we show to the public in our presentations, it goes back to 81 with the monsoon.
Really?
So it's not like the data never existed, but now it's definitely more in the forefront, right?
Now it's accessible, huh?
Yeah.
All right. So I have to ask you both what got you into weather. And Jonny, I'm going to ask you first because you're the coolest.
Is that so? Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
So what did get you into weather? What got you started?
Yeah, it was actually, this is a very common thing, I think, with meteorologists, especially in the desert Southwest. It was the monsoon.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had to have been, I think, 10 years old. I was living in Phoenix at the time on the west side in Glendale. And sure enough, amazing storm dropped out of the north and east. And we could see it coming. You had that massive dust wall. There was the outflow. And when it finally got to our house, it ended up being very severe. I mean, people lost their AC units. We were actually in the hallway at the time. My dad actually wanted the family in the room. The windows were bowing.
Yeah.
It was actually a pretty powerful storm event.
Wow.
And those are just one of those things that gets etched into you when you're a kid, right? And I already had loved weather even before that, but I think that just kind of solidified it for me.
So did you know, right then you were going to try to be a meteorologist?
I did. Yeah, it's one of those,
That's cool.
People say, like, what are you going to be for your career? A firefighter, this, that. I wanted to be a meteorologist. I didn't even know what that meant.
Yeah.
I didn't know what college was or what courses you could take, but I wanted to study the weather.
That is so cool. Now, I know a little bit about Dan's story, but you're going to have to share it again, Dan. It kind of came in the family, didn't it?
It did, yeah. I'm a second-generation meteorologist. Some of my earliest memories should have been playing with, Transformers and toys, but my dad's an operational meteorologist growing up in the Denver, Colorado area. We had all modes of severe weather there. Tornadoes, it's the hail capital of the world, heavy rain, flooding, but I remember getting dragged because my dad has to work, but he's also watching me, taking me with him, A, because it wasn't safe, where we were, or B, to get out to go look. And I remember seeing vivid memories of seeing funnel clouds coming down, on the south side of Denver, to the point where, again, kids are drawing pictures of hanging out with their family at the beach.
Right.
And I'm drawing a picture of the Denver skyline with a funnel cloud coming down, and my dad and I are sitting in a car, and it gets ingrained. I was so fascinating as a kid, so scary, but so exciting. And then my dad was always so confident about being able to diagnose and explain what was going on that it became less scary. And I was like, wow, I want to know something and be passionate about something, and take these complex ideas, and just do some good with them.
Yeah. And so it was kind of about that time you decided you were going to be a meteorologist.
Yeah, like Jonny said, I didn't know what that means schooling. I didn't know that you have to basically, get a degree in math, physics,
calculus,
engineering, calculus 2, calculus 3. But the whole idea of taking complex ideas, something that's going around that affects everybody, and then making it simple and making it useful, it's pretty exciting.
And sort of what has it been your career that brought you to flood control? What was the path?
Yeah. So I actually, like I said, I grew up in Colorado, but I did my undergrad down at University of Arizona in Tucson. And that was really my first taste of, I knew we had exciting weather in the Southwest from learning, but getting to experience that monsoon down there was incredible, and learning the differences too. Then I went and did a graduate studies up in Wisconsin, the opposite side of the country.
Yeah.
Again, but that just kind of reaffirmed everything that I found that I started to love about the field, and I got to see it from a new perspective. And then again, worked at the federal government, was in the research community, but ultimately it's like, I want to get back into the Southwest. It's the place to be. Again, the monsoon, just so fascinating. So
it's so cool.
I guess the monsoon brought me back.
There you go. Jonny, how'd you get here?
How'd I get here? Yeah, well, a little bit of different story than Dan. College was all in Arizona, so Arizona State from start to finish. And so, right, ASU.
Wildcats.
Yeah.
Right? But so definitely the monsoon was a huge influence. I just said that, that was one of the things that got me in here. But yeah, just actually, becoming an adult in the weather community, it was fantastic. Going through college, advisors, professors, the colleagues I'm still in touch with even to this day. It's a tight Arizona weather community. And how I got into my first professional job, I should say, was actually air quality.
Oh, okay.
So I was going through graduate school, and an opportunity to become an air quality meteorologist with Department of Environmental Quality came up, applied and got it.
How about it?
So as I was doing the dissertation, I actually was an air quality meteorologist. So it was great to have both that professional experience building along with the academic side. And then just 2.5 years ago, that's when I joined Dan in the flood control. And I love it. It's really emphasizing what we think about the monsoon, the flash flooding, the severe thunderstorms. So it's been fantastic.
And you're a great addition. And so do you guys want to hear how I got into meteorology?
Of course.
With emphasis.
It's not quite as exciting. So it's like, well, no, I always liked it, and I got my degree at ASU, and I was looking for jobs and was applying for government jobs and, weather service jobs and this kind of jobs and that kind of jobs. And guess who was the only one that would take me? Channel 3.
Really? It was the original?
Channel 3.
That's amazing.
Channel 3 was the first job as a meteorologist I ever took back in 1984. It was just part-time on weekends, but it was a blast because it was like, what? Wait, I get to do this and they pay me for it? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you probably have both.
Exactly.
100%.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So, I kind of tried some of those other routes that you guys did, but it was like, Channel 3. So, it turns out really weird sometimes, doesn't it? In a very good way.
For sure.
How things work out. But I will tell you this, too. When I was a little kid, I didn't get hooked on weather, but I was 6, and my aunt bought me a weather it was a booklet, but it had stuff in it for weather that you could put together. And one of the coolest things, my birthday's in February. It had a wet bulb thing.
You had like a sling psychrometer.
Oh, God, yes.
That's cool. So you actually had to spin it around to try.
So I wet down the thing. I go outside. It's 22 degrees out, and I start doing it, and it freezes.
Oh, no.
And so I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I just distinctly remember that as a 6 or 7-year-old thinking, okay, this weather stuff is harder than I think. I can't get the sling psychrometer to work. So anyway. All right, back to the present. We're on as we record this, we're in the last week or so of June, and we're on the precipice of Monsoon 2025. Now, we just got some, we've been looking at some quote-unquote positive leanings, and our last 30-day, or 90-day, I should say, was not as positive. How do you guys, in terms of moisture chances for Arizona in the monsoon, so how did that impact what you guys look at?
Yeah.
Well, I think the important thing is, the onset still looks like it's going to be on time, and there is going to be some back and forth. So when you factor in the long-range model guidance, sometimes your ensembles, some of them might start dropping back, maybe more drier. So it creates less certainty in the forecast. So back in May, like for instance, when the Climate Prediction Center got their forecast out, we saw that big green bullseye for Arizona, right? So I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So when we recently the update kind of pulled back on there.
Yeah.
But I think the important thing is it doesn't mean a dry monsoon. It just means there might be a little bit more uncertainty than there was back in May. But hey, I mean, an average monsoon versus what we had in the last couple of years would be fantastic, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think we're still leaning towards at least an average type monsoon. So the opportunity for rain and flooding is still going to be there.
I think Jonny needs to remove that inflection on average monsoon too. Okay, we just came out of, we've talked about this before, in the last 4 years, like 2 or 3 of the driest, when you look at the county as a whole, Maricopa County, I mean, in our last 40 years of record dry, if we get even remotely back to what we consider a normal monsoon, so 2 weeks, if you total up the number of 108 days, you get about 2 weeks of active days wherever you are in the valley, around 3 inches of rain, give or take. That's going to feel quite literally like the most active monsoon you've ever had. You'll have people saying, this is the most active Royal. I've seen it in 30 years. I tell you, it's never rained this hard. And they may end up being right around average. Some spots will be drier than average. Some spots will be wet. But if we can just get back to what we consider a normal monsoon in terms of number of rain days, and average rain around the county, with how dry it's been, it's going to feel like 2014 or 2021 all over again. It really will.
Yeah, and also we forget that's part and parcel with the heat. If we get more rain or more moisture in here, it's not going to be as hot. Period.
Heat index, that's always going to be the topic, right? It doesn't matter if it's a dry or wet monsoon. You still have the humidity in some fashion, right? So the heat index is always going to be a concern.
Right. But it does help out, and it can cool off the nights, and
100%.
Instead of having 30 days where it doesn't get below 90. Yeah, that's
so. I do want to bring this really quickly up before you change topics on this, though.
Please.
But the onset that Jonny's talking about, what we always talk about, right? So we all have this. The monsoon starts on June 15th, and then we sit and wait for 2 to maybe 3 weeks, sometimes like 6 weeks last year.
Oh, yeah.
All the indicators that we're looking at in terms of when we finally get that onset of moisture, it looks like it's going to come the normal time, which is really about 4th of July weekend. I'm pretty sure all of our local guidance, near-term guidance is all saying activity starts up. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because when it comes down to monsoon, you got about 100 days where you can maybe see some rain to counter those totals. Instead of it being late July, I think it was like July 17th, 18th for our first intrusion last year. Yeah. We're going to get this going a couple weeks early, which just means better odds for the end of the year, all of us going, all right, congratulations. We had a normal season. Everything was good.
So that would be nice. That would be nice to say, wouldn't it? Yeah. And you know what? I like the idea of sort of a quote unquote normal onset, because sometimes these early onsets, they're just fakes.
Yeah, it's a false start.
Yeah, it's a false start. And it just doesn't do anything for us, and sometimes even sets us back. So
sure.
I mean, I think we're all fingers crossed that somewhere around the 4th that we start seeing some rain in here.
And I think it's important too, if you just kind of zoom out of Arizona right now, look at the satellite. New Mexico is getting hammered right now. As of what we're talking today.
Yeah.
So the thunderstorms and moisture is there. And if you look at it's so great. If you look at Mexico and all the moisture, the thunderstorms are blowing up. That moisture plume, that monsoon plume is already there. It just needs to shift a little bit.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, too, because we always call it the Arizona monsoon, but it's really the North American monsoon.
Yes.
And it really has more of an impact in Mexico than it does in the United States, period. End of story.
Absolutely. In fact, in the research, the literature, it's called the core monsoon area for a reason. So that's just the origins of our subtropical moisture come up from there. So we're actually more on the fringe than what people might appreciate, especially when you start going to Utah and even parts of Colorado. Arizona is closer to the core, but we're still somewhat on the fringe. So that's why we get these dry and wet, back and forths, if you will, throughout a season.
Right, but if they miss or have a bad monsoon in northern Mexico, it impacts them a lot more than it impacts us.
Yeah, if you look at the distribution of rainfall, so sometimes us nerdy scientists like to track each month and where you sit. If you look in central Arizona, it's we call a bimodal peak. So you'll see a peak during the winter season, and then in the middle of the summer, and then you have this dry season on either side.
Right.
When you go down to Sonora or Chihuahua, central Mexico, it's the summer. That's their main peak. They do get rain in the winter, but truly that's 70, 80, 90% of their rainfall is that time.
So it is interesting to me that we call it the Arizona monsoon, and we love to talk about it, but it really is super, super important in Mexico. It's just an amazing thing to me.
Yeah.
And even from forecasting standpoint, we say Arizona, like there's a lot of moving parts to the monsoon, and it includes the Gulf east of Mexico, the Gulf of California, the evapotranspiration. There's a lot of moving parts to the overall monsoon circulation that's beyond Arizona.
Right.
So so sometimes as forecasters, we're looking actually in Texas as an easterly wave approaches us, that kind of thing that can enhance our thunderstorms. So it's a very much a North American phenomenon.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about our granddaddy's monsoon. Okay, this is what I remember. Here we come with memory time, right? So memories from folks who were here in the 70s and 80s. I was here in the 80s. Is that almost every day, a storm would come up the I-10 from Tucson with a little bit of dust, and we'd either get rain or we wouldn't get rain. But it was almost a daily occurrence. Now, it wasn't. It didn't happen every day. So
Correct.
why did we remember that it was like a daily thing coming up the interstate? Is that just human nature?
The only comment I would have on that is that I think once you've been in an area for long enough, you start making up your story in your mind, and you're putting in all the rain events. So it looks like one coherent line. But there were those breaks, right?
Yes.
It was maybe one or two big storms that you remember, and all of a sudden you have 10 of those, 20 of those in your lifetime. So you think it was more active, perhaps.
Yeah,
sure.
It was.
But it wasn't. It might have been a little more active, but it wasn't every day.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the trends, and maybe we'll get into that here as you start picking our brains, and we're like, oh yeah. But again, what Johnny's saying, when you live in a certain area, the big events are the ones that stick out most in your brain.
Right.
Again, I have a shorter time. I haven't been here since the 70s,
Right.
but I mean, been here since the early 2000s. But I can think of 2010 in the winter, 2014 in the summer, 2015 in Wickenburg, 2021, 2000. Like I can think of all those, but I also remember 2020.
Yeah,
I remember last winter.
Super
So you start building that thought, but there are trends that the monsoon is changing.
Yeah.
That's undeniable.
Yeah. And we are going to talk about that.
But it's not every day. I mean, I wish we had a you know what? Those people secretly wish that they were hanging out along the Sea of Cortez, drinking margaritas and fishing every day, where they did get thunderstorms that would roll off the SMO every day.
Yeah, every day.
That's true. If you look at satellite, it'd be a fun exercise just to put on your screensaver if you want.
Yeah.
Just the daily blow up. In Mexico, it's almost nearly every single day.
It's fantastic. And even having traveled southern Arizona a lot in the summer, and I love southern Arizona in the summer, there's so much more thunderstorm activity.
Yes.
You almost never don't see a thunderstorm somewhere in the distance in southern Arizona.
Correct.
Which, again, taps into that memory like, well, there's another storm. Well, it's 50 miles away, but there's another storm.
Right. No, 100%. I mean, that's why they're growing. There's wine.
Yeah.
That goes on there. They're 4,000, 5,000 feet elevated plateau. I mean, it's almost a different ecosystem, and daily occurrence.
I think you forget too, like how high southern Arizona is.
Yeah.
We're the valley and truly are in Arizona.
Right.
If you look at
everything
topographically,
filters right into the Phoenix Valley, all the major river systems.
Right.
Yep, we're in a low spot. And so, the mountains have the advantage in the monsoon, right? And so, when you're going 2,500 feet in Tucson up to Mount Lemmon, 7,000 plus feet, Sierra Vista, 5,000 feet, you're going to have those thunderstorms that are going to be easier to.
So now, before we talk about the storms that come off the rim, because they're coming downhill too, let's talk about the way dust storms can propagate all the way to the valley. One of the reasons I was told by a professor who knew his stuff was it's downhill all the way. It's pretty much where these thunderstorms start to the south of us. It's very strong thunderstorms, but it's downhill into the valley. And it's not a huge downhill gradient into, from some areas of Pinal County or even down into the Tucson area. But that's one of the things that keeps it going. But we are in the basin.
In the basin, it's gravity. I mean, in meteorology, we call it as gravity waves.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so when you have, these thunderstorms release their rainfall, and you see the nice downdrafts come down, very photogenic, that's colder air.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's the key.
Much colder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Denser air.
Denser air.
Yes.
And when you're looking at the surrounding environment where it's 100, 110, 115 plus, that cold air is going to hug the ground as it tries to move out, right? And downhill too. So you get a gravity boost with topography, and it's just colder in general.
Yeah.
So it's going to, like water flowing, it's going to find the easiest route. That's what the outflows will tend to do as well.
That's pretty cool. I've always thought that was cool.
There's truth to that. There really is. At its most simplest conceptual model, yes, denser air is going to roll downhill, and unfortunately, we're at the bottom of
the hill. Yeah. So now we'll talk about that as it relates to, and don't let me forget about little mountains. But okay, keep that in mind for a second.
Yes.
But don't let me forget about, we're going to do storms coming out of the Mogollon Rim, which is a pretty common occurrence.
Yeah, right in the valley.
And we've talked about this a lot of times. It comes down, and this line of storms comes down. Okay. First, you're going to explain to me it's coming downhill, so it's losing something on the way downhill, right? Because it's coming downhill?
The thing is, it's being modified. So
Okay.
at the source, it's its coldest, right?
Right.
As it starts mixing in with this hotter environment, you're going to start losing that temperature difference. And that's what's driving the outflow. Once the outflow becomes the same temperature in the environment, there's no movement. There's no incentive to move it.
Right.
So that's why these outflows will eventually die out.
Right. So go ahead. I'm sorry, Dane.
Oh, yeah, no, just to feed on that. So when we're talking about, all right, our rim to valley setup, right?
Yeah.
Higher terrain, we have this beautiful thing called the chimney effect, where the mountain heats up faster than the air around it.
Right.
It causes air to move up the mountain. We get our thunderstorm. Cool. Steering flow brings it from the northeast to the southwest. Let's send it down. So as we move to the descending air that's going down, it's actually drying the air and actually very inhibitive for additional thunderstorm development. But this magical thing happens where multiple outflow boundaries, though they are weakening, can collide and give us new lift for storms. Yep. There's also other ranges, and this is probably where Jonny can hop in and continue on the propagation method on how we get secondary and even third rounds or 4 rounds of storms as they come, or how they can skip the valley.
Well, that's what I want to know about.
Yeah,
okay.
I know.
That's what we need.
Why is it skipping the valley?
Because they come down from the northeast, and they come, and all of a sudden there's nothing. And all of our reporters are like, Royal, there's nothing. And then that wave gets to the southwest of the valley and it blows up again.
Maricopa,
what's going on?
And, Casa Grande and Gila Bend and all the southwest areas.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you take that bird's eye view, satellite perspective, you actually, you kind of see that, right? They look ferocious in the higher terrain, right? Northeast of us. Like, oh, here it comes. There's no way it cannot miss us, right? And sure enough, it breaks up and then rematerializes somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, a lot has to do with actually how the outflow is interacting with the city. So the city actually has a big role in this. And when we talk about that modifying temperature, right? Well, if you look at the urban heat island effect, it's a very real phenomenon.
Wait a minute, time out.
Yep.
Urban
jargon. Yep.
No. Urban heat island real.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying it is real.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. This is just a documented thing because what you're having is those hotter surfaces. Anyone walking out on the asphalt can say this is a real thing.
Yeah.
Your feet are going to burn on asphalt versus maybe the desert sand.
Yeah.
You know, comparing the two. So when you have this major city in the middle of a landscape, you're going to have a warmer temperature profile. So when those outflows come in, first of all, the outflows are going to modify fast.
Right.
So you're going to lose the momentum, and you need that momentum to get the air mass, the moist air mass, up and start making into a thunderstorm, right? So if you're already losing the outflow momentum and the strength of it, that's already going to put you at a disadvantage. So that's one thing. So it's just important that the city does kind of interact with these outflows. You got to be aware of that in the landscape.
So essentially, these storms will come in. They come to the valley to die.
Well, again,
a lot of them come.
Even if Phoenix didn't exist, or let's just say it was Phoenix back from
1950s.
Yes, sure. Where there's little islands of concrete, like Chandler and Phoenix and Scottsdale, and there's not all the concrete in between. You're already in an environment that's not good for thunderstorm development because we're at the bottom of the valley. What you're doing, though, adding, again, that urban heat line, you're almost reinforcing what we talk about, the cap or a lid.
Right.
So we have to break through that cap to release whatever we have down near the surface, moisture and all that, builds up Caper energy for thunderstorms. You have to break that cap to release it and get new storms. So if we're strengthening that cap by having, again, this urban heat island, it's making it a little more prohibitive. However, when you do break the cap, when you do get the intersecting outflow boundaries, when they do interact with some taller mountain ranges, you get storms, you get an even more explosive environment.
Yeah. As we even saw last year in some of the nighttime storms that we got in the West Valley when we had that major microburst deal where we had 15 or 20 microbursts in about an hour.
Yeah, in the West Valley, right along I-10 there.
Yeah. So it's not to say they all come here to die. I didn't mean that. I have to ask you about little mountains though, because I've always wondered this. So little mountains like South Mountain or the McDowell Mountains, or even a smaller mountain, Camelback Mountain, do those have any real influence in our weather in terms of trying to make moisture?
Trying to make moisture?
Trying to make storms.
Yes.
Okay.
It may not have as much impact as, say, the Mogollon Rim.
Yeah.
There it is. There's going to be some kind of net benefit of a higher terrain feature in a monsoon, an air mass type environment, right? So yeah, the McDowell Mountains especially, or the Estrellas, when you start talking about 3,000, 4,000, because it's not just the height of the terrain, it's the relativeness of its terrain. So you hear this concept of sky islands.
Yes.
Down in southeast Arizona.
Yeah. Well, technically, every mountain in the desert landscape is a sky island to some degree, and that's beneficial. So you get that chimney effect that Dan was talking about. You want that. So, and there's McDowell's and Estrellas can be white tanks.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can see it. In the end, it's not like a they're the Mazatzel Mountains or the Mogollon
kicking
River.
it in.
Right. So they help.
Yeah.
The data shows that you could look at rainfall totals from South Mountain headquarters, which is 2,500 feet, White Tank Peak in the West Valley versus their lower desert counterpart. There's higher rainfall.
That's
totals.
amazing. Yeah.
Almost every year. So there is an influence, but it's not the same as looking at. Our wettest place in the county is probably Mount Ord on the far northeast corner. If you look at the rainfall totals from the monsoon there versus anywhere in Scottsdale or whatever, a few miles away, it's not even close. So elevation matters.
Elevation matters. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about today, because I'm going to have you back because it's so much fun, is how the monsoon is changing, relatively speaking. And again, we talked about this for our monsoon special. So I'll sort of sum it up, but I'll let you explain it. It seems like we're going toward maybe less rain days, but the potential for worse or more severe rain when we do get it. Is that kind of the gist of it?
It sounds counterintuitive,
Yeah.
When you have when you look at the physics of the atmosphere, what's important is its capacity to hold water vapor. Like the monsoon, that fuels the thunderstorms. You have to have that, right? It's the lifeblood of the thunderstorms. So when your capacity to increase your water vapor, your fuel for thunderstorms increases, the chances for more intense rainfall exist. The trade-off, though, is once your carrying capacity increases, a warmer atmosphere, let's say, right, it's more difficult to achieve saturation.
Yes,
so
it's more hostile.
So when those outflows are coming off the mountains,
right,
and you're trying to lift that air mass to reach a cooler atmosphere to reach saturation, all of a sudden now your gap to get there increases. That's important. So they become like missed opportunities. Like the outflows come through, but you just miss out on that level of free convection where you finally get the thunderstorm to take off on its own. Yeah. So when you have a more moist environment in general, your outflow can actually trigger that thunderstorm at a lower altitude. That's what we see in the nice cloud bases, right? So, but if you have a bigger distribution of that, it's just more difficult to achieve that critical level.
Yeah.
It is kind of hard to understand that.
It is so counterintuitive, but it's such an important factor, okay? Because again, in the net result, most of your viewers, they want to know how much it rained at the end of the summer, right?
Yeah.
And so if it came in 5 days, including one event that was incredibly impactful, that changed some kid's life, and she ultimately becomes a weather person later on. I mean, there you go. Yeah. That feels the same as if it came over 20 very just moderate or low end kind of events, just light rains, right? So how impactful the events are does matter. And again, this is the way. Fewer the opportunities are there, but fewer storm days, but more volatility when the storms do form, more ability to drop heavier rainfall amounts. And in otherwise, the same environment, just maybe
it's
a few decades ago.
If you get that a warming trend, for instance, your capacity increases.
All right. Give me the website, because it's a great website. People can get a lot of info, not just rainfall info, but all kinds of data on water flow and flooding.
Yeah.
Please let us know.
All right. Yeah. So
give us the stuff.
You mentioned earlier how, back, 10, 15, 20 years ago, how there's all this information, but, or no, that was hard to find some of this information. Well, again, we have gone through great lengths, all the branches, and not even just flood control district, but the other county departments within Maricopa County to try and make a one-stop shop. Maricopa.gov/monsoon. Heat safety, flood safety, all the rainfall runoff stream flow data. If you want to know what to do about flood insurance, or what to do after a storm, or where to go if you live in Phoenix or Scottsdale or Peoria, how to contact them for more information. We've truly tried to make a one-stop shop. Maricopa.gov/monsoon. You want to learn more about dust storms? Well, got more information with Maricopa County Air Quality, as well as Department of Transportation about dust. You name it, we've got it covered in there.
That's great. And it's good information. And again, I love your website. Everybody should check out your website. That's for sure.
Please.
Jonny Malloy and Dan Henz, you guys rock. Yeah. So this is why it's fun. This is why it's great to be in the weather community. And you know what I was thinking of? Erin Ann Saffel, our friend, the state climatologist.
Yes.
She has a similar child story about a storm that impacted her.
Oh, I guarantee
that got
it.
her into weather. So it really is cool. So anyway, thanks guys for coming by. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.